In today's interconnected world, it's more important than ever to maintain global financial stability and prevent the financing of criminal and terrorist activities. In this video, we will discuss the importance of sanctions, a real-life example of a company that failed to identify sanction entities, the fines and penalties, the harms that affected the company, and the lessons learned to protect our company and customers and vendors from this threat. One of the most effective ways to achieve this is through the use of sanctions lists. But before diving deep into our video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay updated with our latest videos. Sanctions lists are used by governments and international organizations to identify individuals, organizations, and entities that are involved in illicit activities. There are various sanctions lists maintained by different countries and international organizations, including the United Nations, the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, in the US, and the HM Treasury, HMT, in the United Kingdom. It's mandatory for all countries, financial institutions, and companies to follow these sanctions lists. They are required to ensure that they do not do business with individuals or entities listed on these sanctions lists. Failure to comply with these measures can lead to significant financial and reputational risks, as well as legal penalties. Non-compliance with sanctions lists can result in severe consequences. For example, JP Morgan Chase was fined $920 million in 2020 for violating U.S. sanctions against countries such as Iran, Cuba, and Venezuela. It's crucial for companies and financial institutions to have effective compliance measures in place to prevent dealings with sanctioned individuals and entities. This includes screening customers, vendors, and transactions against the sanctions lists and having a centralized database for tracking and monitoring transactions. Compliance with sanctions lists is key to maintaining global financial stability and preventing illicit activities. By following these measures, we can help create a safer and more secure world for everyone. Sanctions and embargoes are international tools for ensuring financial stability and preventing dealing with sanctioned people. They help countries and organizations to maintain peace and security and to combat illicit activities such as money laundering and terrorism financing. However, companies and financial institutions must ensure they are not dealing with any entity or person listed in the sanctions list. Sanctions are one of the primary tools used by the international community to influence a country or regime's behavior. They aim to put pressure on a government or individual by imposing restrictions on trade, financial transactions, and other activities. Companies and financial institutions must comply with these sanctions to avoid any legal penalties and reputational risks. One real-life example of a company that failed to identify sanctioned entities is Standard Chartered Bank. In 2012, the bank was found guilty of violating U.S. sanctions against Iran, Sudan, Libya, and Burma. The bank was fined $667 million for hiding over 60,000 transactions totaling $250 billion. Standard Chartered Bank's conduct posed a significant risk to U.S. national security and undermined the effectiveness of sanctions against these countries. The consequences of such actions are severe, as they can harm the reputation of the bank and lead to heavy fines and penalties. In Standard Chartered Bank's case, the bank faced massive fines and was forced to implement stricter compliance measures to avoid future violations. The lessons learned from this case are significant. Companies and financial institutions must ensure that they have robust compliance policies in place to identify and prevent dealings with individuals and entities listed in sanctions lists. The compliance policies should include training and awareness programs for staff, regular risk assessments, and the use of sanction screening software to identify potential sanction breaches. Another recent example of a company that failed to comply with the sanction screening process is ZTE Corporation, a Chinese multinational telecommunications equipment and systems company. In 2018, ZTE was found guilty of violating U.S. sanctions against Iran and North Korea and was fined $1.19 billion by the U.S. Department of Commerce. ZTE was accused of shipping U.S. origin goods to Iran and North Korea, which were prohibited under U.S. sanctions. The company was also found to have made false statements and obstructed the investigation by the U.S. authorities. As part of the settlement, ZTE was required to pay a substantial fine and agree to a 7-year suspended denial of export privileges, which meant that the company would not be able to receive U.S. origin goods and technology during that period. The company was also required to implement a comprehensive compliance program to prevent future violations. ZTE's case highlights the importance of implementing effective compliance measures to prevent dealings with sanctioned individuals and entities. Companies must ensure that their employees are trained to recognize and report any potential violations, and they must have robust systems in place to screen customers, vendors, and transactions against the sanctions lists. Failure to comply with these measures can lead to significant financial and reputational risks, as well as legal penalties. Conclusion: sanctions and embargoes are vital tools for maintaining global peace and security. Companies and financial institutions have a responsibility to comply with these sanctions to avoid any legal penalties and reputational risks. Standard Chartered Bank's example teaches us the importance of implementing strict compliance measures to prevent violations and the significant consequences of non-compliance. By adopting robust compliance policies, companies can ensure that they protect themselves, their customers, and their vendors from this threat. Sanctions screening is a crucial component of international trade, and it is essential that all companies and financial institutions comply with these regulations. Sanctions lists are compiled by different governments and international bodies to promote national security and combat illegal activity, and failures to comply with them can result in significant fines, reputational damage, and even criminal prosecution. By ensuring that all international transactions are above board, we can create a safer and more ethical global economy. Remember, it is everyone's responsibility to follow sanctions lists and play their part in promoting financial stability and security for all. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comments section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay up to date with the latest compliance news and AML analysis. Keep learning and stay competitive with us.